hope you've all had a very good Christmas. I have my pint of rum and coke.
It comes in pints?
Oh.
I'm getting one.
You've had a whole half already!
And I am ready to get started on my most disappointing reads. Now, the only thing I won't be including in this is arcs. When I've DNF'd an arc book, or it's been less than 3 stars, I'm just not including it. So these are books that are not arcs. Mostly I've bought. They haven't come in book boxes, I don't think. 4 of the 10 of them have come from book boxes. So first up is 25 Days by Per Jacobson. I've just finished recording a review of this, which will come out the day before this does. But this was a 1-star. It just, for a horror novel, it was a snooze fest. And that, in my eyes, is unforgivable. That's all I now have to say about it. So next up is Voyage of the Damned by Frances White, and this came in the January box for Illumicrate, and I was so excited to read this. It's a murder mystery fantasy, and I thought it was marketed as adult, but that's a whole other annoyance when YA gets marketed as adult just because it swears, which this one ultimately does. I have a review video for it, but it annoyed me so much because the premise interested me so much. The characters were annoying. I wish that somebody would just kill off the main characters because I just couldn't be doing with them. The book itself was, I loved the cover, I loved the art. It was very, very pretty. And I know some people keep very, very pretty books, even if they don't like the story in them. But I will never read it again. And so I sold it. It was disappointing. It was anticlimactic. I did give it 3 stars though. I liked some of the other characters. I didn't like the main character. I thought it was just a dick. Moving on to The Forbidden Queen by Anne O'Brien. And this is a historical fiction of the life of Catherine de Valois. And she was the queen of King Henry V. Her second marriage was to just a random guy called Owen Tudor. And thus started the royal Tudor line, which you would think would be an interesting concept. She's a very interesting, little-known historical figure. But rather than be historical fiction, it turned into historical romance, where Catherine's only one objective was getting Owen Tudor to fall in love with her and marry her. And she's such a pick-me, it's just not good. She makes her into this smiling, simping female that just wants to go with any guy that flirts with her. And somehow that's not how I think history went. I think I gave it 2 stars, but I think that was being generous. So next up we have, and I have learnt my lesson a little bit. This was recommended to me on social media, which is A Forest of Vanity and Valor by A.P. Beswick. And it's the first book in a series of, I think, 6 or 7 books. I bought the box set, I bought the full series before I'd even read one of them. Big mistake. I know it was a big mistake. I read the sort of teaser novella that's only available on Kindle called A Lock of Grace and Greed. That interested me. It interested me enough, with it being so little, that I thought that interest would go to the books. I DNF'd the first one because it was so... It was juvenile. The writing was juvenile. The concept was the Avengers meets characters of English myth. So you had, in the first one, A Forest of Vanity and Valor, you had the Robin Hood character. And I think in the next one you would have had some kind of pirate character. There were all these different characters that in a book near the end would all meet up and have to face this foe. Like the Avengers films. It wasn't good. I couldn't even get past... I didn't care. The characters weren't well written. The story wasn't well written. I thought myth would be intertwined with it, but it's not. I just couldn't get into any of it. And I sold the entire thing because I wasn't even going to keep on reading a book series that I DNF'd the first one. It's just not going to happen. Next up on my list was a book box book called Ghost Tamer by Meredith Lyons. And this came in one of the Twisted Retreat book boxes, which I stopped getting at the end of 2023 because the cost is extortionate. I thought I would enjoy this. It's a horror. I thought there would be ghosts, more ghosts in it. It's not. It's more of a thriller, bland thriller at that. What did I give it? I gave it 2 stars. It had a good premise. Aspiring comedian Rayleigh is the sole survivor of a disastrous train wreck. Faced with the intense grief of losing her best friend, she realises that someone is following her, and has been following her all her life. Trouble is, no one else can see him. For a ghostly tag-along, Casper's not so bad. He might even be exactly the partner Rayleigh needs to fight the evil spirit hell-bent on destroying her. Rayleigh and her spectral friend must learn why this demonic spirit is haunting her and how she can stop him before he destroys her life and her soul, which much to her chagrin means that she needs the help of a psychic, although she's sure they're all charlatans, and must rid herself of the pesky ghost hunter who's interested in exploiting her new abilities. It was very, very easy to guess what happens at the end. It was very, very easy to guess who people were. Really, she's an alright character. The guy that is this ghost hunter was very well written because he's so slimy and smarmy and disgusting. You feel like punching him through the page. But I think the horror aspect could have really been ramped up. I think the writing where she's dealing with the grief of losing her friend in such tragic circumstances is well written. It was just the horror thriller aspect that fell far short of the mark for me. Next up is Moonstone by Laura Purcell, and this came in one of the locked library boxes and is kind of a retelling / rehash of Little Red Riding Hood, except with werewolves and romance. I DNF'd it, as you can probably tell from that. I just don't even care. I DNF'd it. I didn't like it. It was too easy, too predictable, too sloppy. I just couldn't anymore. I just didn't want to. So next up, I really got back into enjoying reading Greek myth. I went on a buying binge of Greek myth, which is why I now have a shelf of it. And one of the first books I read was recommended on TikTok, which should have been a red flag right from the start, but it was Athena's Child by Hannah Lynn, and I read it, and I was kinder to it than I should have been. I gave it 2 stars. It was her first book. Debut novels get a little bit of, leeway for me, but it just wasn't good. It was about this big. I don't have it to show you because I sold it. It didn't belong on my shelf anymore. It was the myth of Medusa, how she got to be there, what happened afterwards. It was just, a 10-year-old would have enjoyed it. I did not, because it was this big, and you can't fit something of a myth that big with so much in it into a book that's that big. It was rushed. It just wasn't good. No. There are better books to read for that myth than that one. So next up we have The King's Sister, another book from Anne O'Brien that I got back into reading, and this details the life of Elizabeth of Lancaster, and she is the daughter of Duke John of Lancaster. He is a very, very powerful historical figure. He was one of the sons of Edward III, uncle to King Richard II, who his son Henry, who later the Henry IV, usurps his throne. Very big historical figure. Elizabeth is Henry's sister, and being so close to the throne, so close to royal events, you would think that would make her interesting. In this, she just wants to marry the one guy that she's told not to. She's told to stay away from this guy, he's not good for her, etc., etc., and it's all that she can run towards. She marries him and then complains. Incessantly complains about how he's treated. So the guy that she marries is John Holland. He is the half-brother of King Richard II. Then she's surprised when her brother usurps Richard's throne. Richard dies under suspicious circumstances, and she is surprised that her husband, who is Richard's half-brother, does not immediately swear loyalty to her brother, Henry, who probably killed his brother. And she's surprised by that fact. And all through this book, we're told that she's intelligent and she's politically savvy. Where? She is whiny, spiteful, selfish, ungrateful, and dull. It got 2 stars just because it was like watching a bad telenovela. Now we're back to the 2 biggest disappointments. And this one is the last book box disappointment. The biggest, I've said, because this is The Last Raven by Helen Glynn Jones. And this was the first book in the new subscription from the Look Library, the Forbidden Wing subscription, which is romantasy. I've liked a few romantasy books this year, so I thought I would sign up and find out what's cracking. I DNF'd it about 20-30% in. It's just not good. It's a very pretty book. Lots of people like it. It is on eBay, by the way, and I'm going to link my eBay down below because I have things to sell that I don't want. Someone will appreciate this a hell of a lot more than I did because I ended up DNFing it. It was too much. You could see where it was going. It was glaringly obvious. And I just didn't care enough about the characters to find out why they got where they were going. There's a big war in the background. She is the human daughter of 2 vampires in a vampire-controlled political land. And she's the only human, and humans are subjugated. But she's the princess set to inherit this world of vampires controlled by vampires that subjugate humans. I thought it would be very good. It leaned a bit too much into this sloppy romance for me, so I DNF'd it and I cancelled the subscription, and then I cancelled the Look Library subscription. I wasn't impressed with the things that they were putting out anyway. So on to the biggest disappointment of 2024. It didn't come in a book box. This one I picked myself. I pre-ordered it. I was excited to get it. This is Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid. I pre-ordered it from Waterstones because the cover was gorgeous. The spread edges were gorgeous. It was a Lady Macbeth. It was not like retelling, but it was a detail of her life interspersed with the real Lady Macbeth of historical figure, because she was a real person, interspersed with what happens in the Shakespeare play and the Scottish landscape. It was so badly written, badly plotted, just badly done that I felt so cheated. I DNF'd it and I sold it. The character of Lady Macbeth, for a start, she's French. She goes to Scotland to marry Macbeth, this really vicious, horrible warlord that she thinks keeps his ex-wives locked up in the basement. And they become the witches of prophecy. Why would he believe them when he's married them and then locked them in a bit? They could tell him anything. But she is sort of wimpy and, whatever my man wants. And I just couldn't, because the real Lady Macbeth is not like that. If you want a damn good Lady Macbeth retelling, it's this one by C.H. Follen, The Queen is Dead. Absolutely amazing indie book. What a snooze fest. I sold it. I hope you have more fun with it than I did, because I was so looking forward to it. It was hyped up to be so good, such a good retelling, and it was tripe. Utter trash. And I have another of Ava Reid's books. I have A Study in Drowning somewhere up there from one of the Illumicrate boxes that now I don't know whether I'm going to like it or not, because if the writing is like it was in that, it was just juvenile and just not good. So these were my 10 books that most disappointed me in 2024. 2025 hopefully will be better. And remember, it is not bad to DNF a book that you do not like. You don't have to read books. Do not feel obligated to read books that you don't like just to get to the end, or just because you want to write a review. I've written reviews of books I've DNF'd, and people say, well, how can you say that you've read it when you haven't? I read enough. enough to know that I hated it, which is why I'm DNFing it. And that needs to be a review. I DNF'd it, didn't like it for this, and this. Let me know what your top disappointments are for 2024 down in the comments below. I always love reading your comments. And remember to like, remember to subscribe, and Merry Christmas.